Undercover owner orders steak at his own restaurant, freezes when waitress secretly slips him a note. Marcus Delacroix adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and pulled his baseball cap lower over his graying temples. The man who owned 7 high-end restaurants across the city had never felt more like a fraud than he did walking through the polished glass doors of Meridian, his flagship establishment. Tonight, he wasn't the celebrated restaurateur whose face graced food magazines. Tonight, he was just another diner with a reservation under the name M. Davis. The familiar scent of rosemary and garlic hit him as he stepped into the warm amber lighting of his own creation. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across white tablecloths, and the soft murmur of conversation mixed with the gentle clink of silverware. Pride swelled in his chest. Even after 12 years, Meridian still took his breath away. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?" The hostess, Sarah, smiled professionally. She'd worked for him for 3 years, yet showed no hint of recognition. "Perfect. Davis, party of 1. Marcus replied, deepening his voice slightly and affecting a slight southern drawl he practiced in his car. As Sarah led him to a corner table, exactly where he'd requested when making the reservation, Marcus scanned the dining room with the critical eye of someone who'd built his reputation on perfection. The servers moved with practiced efficiency. Wine glasses sparkled under the lights, and every table setting looked immaculate. His chest tightened with satisfaction. This was why food critics from 3 states drove here to experience what he'd created. But that wasn't why he was here tonight. 3 weeks ago, Marcus had received an anonymous email that made his blood run cold. "Your staff thinks you're a joke. They're stealing from you, talking trash about you, and treating customers like garbage when you're not around. Come see for yourself, M. Davis, Friday 8 p.m. The message included photos that looked like they were taken inside Meridian's kitchen, blurry shots of staff on their phones, a server apparently spitting in food, and what looked like his head chef pocketing cash from the register. Marcus had stared at those photos for hours. Were they real? Photoshopped? Some kind of elaborate prank? He'd built Meridian on trust. Trust in his staff, trust in his systems, trust in the culture he'd carefully cultivated. The idea that it was all a lie felt like a knife twisting in his gut. So here he was, playing detective in his own restaurant, hoping to God the anonymous tipster was wrong. "Can I start you with something to drink, sir?" Marcus looked up to see Jennifer, one of his most experienced servers. She'd been with Meridian since the 2nd year, had worked her way up from busser, and he'd personally helped her through culinary school. If anyone embodied the family atmosphere he tried to create, it was Jen. "I'll have the 2018 Cabernet, please. The Napa Valley one." He watched her face carefully for any sign of recognition, but saw only professional courtesy. "Excellent choice. Our sommelier actually recommends pairing that with our dry-aged ribeye if you're considering our steaks tonight." Marcus nodded, impressed despite himself. Even undercover, his staff was delivering exactly the kind of knowledgeable service that had earned Meridian its reputation. Maybe the anonymous email was just some disgruntled competitor trying to mess with his head. As Jennifer walked away, Marcus let his eyes wander the dining room more deliberately. At the table near the window, a young couple shared what looked like their first date, nervous laughter and shy glances. An older gentleman at the bar was deep in conversation with Tom, the bartender, probably getting recommendations for his extensive wine collection. Everything looked normal. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect? Marcus shook his head. He was being paranoid. This was his restaurant, his life's work, his... A soft thud interrupted his thoughts. A folded napkin had landed silently beside his bread plate. He looked up, startled, but Jennifer was already walking away, her back straight and her pace deliberately casual. She hadn't even paused. Marcus glanced around the dining room. No one seemed to be watching him. The couple by the window was still lost in each other's eyes. The businessman at table 12 was typing furiously on his laptop. Everything appeared completely normal. With trembling fingers, Marcus unfolded the napkin. The handwriting was Jennifer's. He recognized it from years of staff notes and schedule requests. but the words made his heart stop. This is a setup. Cameras are rolling. Don't react. The napkin felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in his hands. Marcus forced himself to keep his expression neutral, even as his mind raced. Cameras? What cameras? Set up for what? He took a sip of water, using the motion to scan the room more carefully. That's when he saw them, tiny details he'd missed before. The man at table 8 had what looked like a button camera on his jacket. The woman near the kitchen entrance kept glancing at her purse, which was positioned at an odd angle on the table. Even the businessman with the laptop, the screen was angled just wrong, like he was filming rather than working. Marcus's throat went dry. How many were there? How long had they been filming? And why? He folded the napkin carefully and slipped it into his pocket, his hand shaking slightly. Jennifer appeared at his elbow as if from nowhere. Have you decided on your entree, sir? Her voice was perfectly professional, but when their eyes met for just a split second, he saw something there, a warning, maybe even fear. The ribeye sounds perfect. Marcus managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Excellent. And sir? Jennifer leaned slightly closer, pretending to collect his bread plate. Whatever happens next, remember that some of us are still loyal. She straightened and walked away, leaving Marcus alone with his racing heart and 100 terrifying questions. The warm, familiar atmosphere of his beloved restaurant suddenly felt like a trap closing around him. As he sat there, trying to look like just another customer enjoying his evening out, Marcus caught a reflection in the window beside his table. Someone was definitely filming him from across the room. The camera was small, professional, and pointed directly at his face. The anonymous email hadn't been a warning about his staff. It had been bait. And he'd walked right into it. Marcus forced himself to cut his steak with steady hands, even though his appetite had completely vanished. He chewed mechanically, his mind spinning as he tried to make sense of what was happening. Maybe Jennifer was playing some elaborate prank. Maybe this was all some misunderstanding. Maybe. A flash of movement caught his eye. The woman with the suspicious purse was now holding what looked like a small recording device, pointing it directly at his table while pretending to check her phone. When she noticed him looking, she quickly tucked it away and turned back to her companion. This wasn't a prank. Marcus took another bite of steak, using the motion to survey the room more systematically. Now that he knew what to look for, the signs were everywhere. The businessman's laptop screen definitely showed a video feed. He could see the reflection of Marcus's own table in the corner of the display. A woman near the bar had a pen that looked suspiciously like a recording device, and she'd been taking notes while staring at him for the past 10 minutes. How many of them were there? 5? 10? The entire dining room? His hands began to shake, and he quickly set down his fork. Stay calm, he told himself. Don't give them whatever reaction they're looking for. But what were they looking for? What was the endgame here? A child's laughter from across the room made him look up, and that's when his world tilted completely off its axis. In the far corner booth, partially hidden behind a decorative plant, sat a man Marcus had thought was deceased for 7 years. The same sharp cheekbones, the same piercing blue eyes, the same scar running from his left temple to his jaw, a souvenir from the kitchen accident that had nearly ended his career before it began. Damon Cross. Marcus's fork clattered to his plate. Several diners turned to look, and he could practically feel the cameras zooming in on his face. But he couldn't look away from the ghost sitting 30 feet away. Damon looked older, grayer, but unmistakably alive. He was wearing an expensive suit and watching Marcus with an expression that mixed triumph with cold, burning hatred. When their eyes met, Damon raised his wine glass in a mock toast, his lips curving into a smile that held no warmth at all. Marcus felt like he was drowning. The dining room seemed to spin around him as memories crashed over him like a tidal wave. The fire at their original restaurant location 7 years ago. The investigators telling him that Damon's body had been found in the ruins. The funeral where he'd stood over an empty casket and grieved for his former partner, despite everything that had happened between them. But Damon was sitting right there, very much alive, and very clearly orchestrating whatever this was. "Is everything all right, sir?" Jennifer appeared beside his table, her face a mask of professional concern. But her eyes held a warning, "Don't lose it. Not here. Not now." "Fine," Marcus managed, his voice hoarse. "Just, the steak is excellent." She nodded and moved away, but not before sliding another napkin onto his table. Marcus waited until she was gone before unfolding it with trembling fingers. "He's been planning this for years. There are at least 12 cameras in here, plus a live stream. Whatever you do, don't confront him directly. Play normal. Play normal." Right. How was he supposed to play normal when the man he'd watched buried was sitting across the room, clearly orchestrating some kind of elaborate revenge plot? Marcus forced himself to take another bite of steak. It tasted like cardboard. Around him, the restaurant continued its evening rhythm, servers delivering plates, the sommelier discussing wine pairings, the soft clink of glasses and silverware. But now he could see the cracks in the facade. The couple by the window weren't on a date. They were both subtly filming him. The older gentleman at the bar wasn't a wine enthusiast. He was holding what looked like a professional microphone disguised as a phone. This wasn't just surveillance. This was a production. Marcus glanced back at Damon's table. His former partner was now leaning forward, speaking intently to someone across from him, someone Marcus couldn't see clearly because of the plant. But he could make out the edge of what looked like professional camera equipment. A documentary crew. They were making a documentary. The realization hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about public destruction. Whatever Damon had planned, it was designed to be seen by thousands, maybe millions of people. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Enjoying your dinner, old friend? The real show starts in 10 minutes. Hope you're ready for your close-up. D." His hands were shaking so badly now that he could barely hold the phone. 7 years? Damon had been alive for 7 years, planning this moment, setting up this elaborate trap. And Marcus had walked right into it, just like he'd walked into every one of Damon's schemes back when they were partners. But why now? Why tonight? What was so special about? Another text. "By the way, your staff has been very helpful. Amazing what people will do for the right price. Enjoy the rest of your meal." Marcus looked up to see Jennifer approaching with the dessert menu, her face pale but determined. As she set it down, she whispered without moving her lips, "Whatever happens next, remember, not all of us sold out." The dessert menu was just a prop. Written on the inside cover in Jennifer's handwriting was a single sentence that made Marcus's blood run cold. "The real show starts when they make you look like a monster." As Marcus stared at those words, the presence seemed to dissolve around him. The elegant dining room faded, replaced by memories he'd spent 7 years trying to forget. Suddenly he was back in the cramped office above their first restaurant, 28 years old and full of dreams, arguing with Damon over expansion plans that would either make them rich or destroy everything they'd built. "We can't afford 3 new locations, Damon!" Marcus had shouted, waving the loan documents. "The numbers don't add up. We'll be leveraged to our eyeballs. That's how you build an empire, Marcus." Damon had fired back, his eyes blazing with that familiar mixture of ambition and recklessness. "You think the big players got where they are by playing it safe? We take this loan, we expand fast, we dominate the market before anyone else can catch up." But Marcus had refused to sign. He'd seen too many restaurants crash and burn trying to grow too quickly. Their single location was successful, why risk it all? That's when everything started falling apart. Marcus blinked, forcing himself back to the present. Across the room, Damon was still watching him, that cold smile never wavering. But now Marcus could see past the expensive suit and professional setup to the man he'd once called his best friend, his business partner, his brother. The memory of their last conversation came rushing back with painful clarity. Damon storming into the restaurant at closing time, his face twisted with fury and desperation. "You ruined me!" Damon had screamed, shoving Marcus against the wall. I took out those loans anyway, using my shares as collateral. When you blocked the expansion, the banks called them in. I'm losing my house, Marcus. My wife left me. I've got nothing. You went behind my back. Marcus had replied, his own anger flaring. You forged my signature on documents, lied to investors, told people I'd agreed to deals I knew nothing about. You brought this on yourself. That's when Damon had made the accusation that destroyed everything between them. You're stealing from the till. I've been watching the books, Marcus. Money's disappearing, and you're the only one with access. The accusation was insane, but Damon had shown him doctored receipts, manipulated bank statements, carefully constructed evidence that made it look like Marcus was embezzling from their joint account. It was all lies, but Damon had been desperate enough to believe his own deception. Marcus shook his head, trying to focus on his surroundings. The restaurant, the cameras, the immediate danger. But the memories kept pulling him back. The fire had happened 3 weeks after that confrontation. Marcus had been at home when the call came, their restaurant was in flames, and Damon was inside. By the time the fire department arrived, the building was a total loss. They'd found a body in the office, burned beyond recognition but wearing Damon's watch, his wedding ring. At the funeral, Marcus had stood over that closed casket and wept, not just for Damon, but for their friendship, their dreams, everything they'd built together that had turned to ash. He'd blamed himself for years. If he'd just signed those expansion papers, if he'd found a way to help Damon instead of fighting him, maybe his partner would still be alive. Except Damon was alive. Very much alive. And that meant Marcus's blood turned to ice as the pieces fell into place. The fire hadn't been an accident. The body they'd found wasn't Damon's. His former partner had staged his own death, probably finished some homeless person and dressed the corpse in his clothes and jewelry. The insurance payout on the restaurant would have covered Damon's debts and given him enough money to disappear and start planning his revenge. 7 years. 7 years of guilt, of building Meridian as a monument to their lost friendship, of donating money to charities in Damon's name. 7 years of Marcus carrying the weight of their final argument, believing he'd driven his best friend to his death. All while Damon was out there somewhere, alive and planning this moment. Marcus looked up to find Damon standing now, walking slowly across the dining room toward his table. The cameras tracked his movement like predators following wounded prey. Other diners, the real ones, not the plants, were starting to notice the tension, the way conversations were dying down and heads were turning. Marcus Delacroix, Damon said when he reached the table, his voice carrying clearly in the suddenly quiet restaurant. It's been a long time. Marcus struggled to find his voice. Damon. You're alive. Disappointed? Damon's smile was sharp as a blade. I know you've been living quite well off my death. Built quite an empire on the ashes of our partnership, didn't you? The cameras were rolling. Marcus could feel them closing in from every angle, capturing his shock, his confusion, his pain. This was what Damon wanted, to expose him publicly, to destroy not just his business but his reputation. You faked your death, Marcus whispered. I had to disappear before you completely destroyed me. Damon replied loudly, clearly performing for the cameras now. You stole from our restaurant, blocked every opportunity for growth, and then tried to frame me for your own crimes. The fire was an unfortunate accident that gave me the chance to start over. Lies. All lies. But Marcus could see how it would play to an audience that didn't know the real story. Damon had always been the better performer, the more charismatic of the two. He could sell any story he wanted. That's not what happened, Marcus said, but his voice sounded weak even to his own ears. Isn't it? Damon leaned closer, his voice dropping just low enough that the cameras would have to strain to pick it up. Because I have evidence, old friend. 7 years worth of evidence about what you really are. Before Marcus could respond, chaos erupted around them like a carefully choreographed dance of destruction. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Damon had orchestrated every second of what happened next. It started in the kitchen. Through the service window, Marcus could see his head chef, Roberto, suddenly shouting at one of the line cooks. The argument escalated quickly, Roberto's voice carrying into the dining room as he berated the younger man for what looked like a simple mistake. But this wasn't the Roberto that Marcus knew, the calm, professional chef who never raised his voice in 5 years of working together. "You worthless piece of garbage!" Roberto screamed, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. "Can't you do anything right? Get out of my kitchen!" The line cook, Marcus recognized him as Tommy, a culinary school graduate who'd been with them for 2 years, stumbled backward, tears streaming down his face. The kid looked genuinely terrified, not like someone who was acting. Marcus started to stand, instinctively moving to intervene, but Damon placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," he said quietly. "The cameras are watching your every reaction. Wouldn't want people to think you condone this kind of behavior, would you?" At that moment, a server burst through the kitchen doors carrying a steaming bowl of soup. Marcus watched in horror as the young woman, he didn't recognize her, she must be new, deliberately stumbled near table 12, sending the bowl flying. The soup splashed across the businessman's laptop, and as he jumped back with a cry of alarm, Marcus could see chunks of what looked like raw chicken floating in the liquid. "Oh my God!" the woman shrieked. "I'm so sorry! The kitchen, they're serving raw chicken in the soup!" The businessman, one of Damon's plants, Marcus realized, began retching dramatically. "I ate some of that," he gasped. "I think I'm going to be sick." Other diners turned to stare, their conversations dying as the word, raw chicken, rippled through the room. Marcus could see the cameras capturing every horrified expression, every moment of rising panic. But the chaos was just beginning. At table 6, a woman suddenly began clutching her throat, her face turning red. "I can't breathe," she wheezed. "Something in the sauce, I'm allergic." Her companion, another plant, Marcus was certain, began shouting for help. "She's having an allergic reaction. Call an ambulance. This restaurant is trying to finish people." The woman's performance was Oscar-worthy, complete with realistic-looking hives breaking out across her neck and arms. Marcus knew it had to be fake, but it looked absolutely convincing. More servers appeared, but instead of the trained professionals Marcus employed, these seemed incompetent and panicked. One dropped a tray of glasses near the entrance, sending shards skittering across the floor. Another began arguing with a customer about their order, her voice shrill and unprofessional. "What's happening?" Marcus whispered, but he already knew. Damon had somehow replaced his regular staff with actors, people hired to make his restaurant look like a nightmare. "Just the truth coming out," Damon replied, his smile widening. "Amazing what people will do for money, isn't it? Some of your staff were very eager to take a night off once I explained the situation." Through the service window, Marcus could see more chaos in the kitchen. Someone had deliberately overturned a pot of sauce, creating a massive mess on the floor. Food was being dropped, orders were being mixed up, and the whole operation looked like a disaster zone. His phone buzzed. A notification from social media. Someone was live-streaming the chaos, and the viewer count was climbing rapidly. Hundreds of people were watching his restaurant fall apart in real time, seeing what looked like health code violations, staff abuse, and customer endangerment. The comments were already pouring in. "This place should be shut down. Look how they treat their workers. I'm never eating out again." 20,000 viewers and climbing, Damon said, checking his own phone. "Funny how quickly things can go viral these days. By tomorrow morning, every food blogger and news outlet in the country will be talking about this. Your reputation, your empire, everything you built on my grave, gone." Jennifer appeared at Marcus's elbow, her face pale but determined. She leaned down to collect his empty wine glass, whispering urgently, "The kitchen staff you see aren't yours. Roberto's locked in the office upstairs. Most of your regular servers were told they had the night off. These people, they're all actors." Marcus felt a surge of relief. His real staff hadn't betrayed him. But that relief was quickly replaced by horror as he realized the scope of Damon's plan. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about complete destruction. On cue, another customer near the bar began complaining loudly about finding something disgusting in her food. She held up what looked like a finished cockroach, waving it around for all the cameras to see. "This is unacceptable!" she shrieked. "How is this place even still open? Where's the health department?" Marcus watched his life's work crumble around him, broadcast live to thousands of viewers who had no idea they were watching an elaborate performance. Every disaster looked real, every violation seemed genuine, and every moment of chaos was being captured from multiple angles by professional cameras. Damon leaned closer, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "The beautiful thing about the internet, Marcus, is that nobody cares about the truth. They just want a good show. And you, my friend, are about to become the most hated restaurateur in America." For a moment, Marcus felt the crushing weight of defeat. Watching his reputation crumble in real time, seeing thousands of viewers absorb Damon's carefully crafted lies, felt like drowning in quicksand. But then something shifted inside him. The same instinct that had built his restaurant empire from nothing began to kick in. He wasn't the naive young man who trusted Damon blindly all those years ago. He'd learned to read people, to spot deception, to think strategically under pressure. And right now, he was seeing the flaws in Damon's perfect plan. "You know what's funny about elaborate schemes?" Marcus said quietly, leaning back in his chair with a calmness that clearly surprised Damon. "They require a lot of moving parts. And the more parts you have, the more chances there are for things to go wrong." Damon's smile faltered slightly. "What are you talking about?" Marcus pulled out his phone, making sure his movements were slow and deliberate for the cameras. "Well, for starters, you made a mistake with the allergic reaction lady. See, I know every supplier we use, every ingredient in every dish. That woman claimed she was allergic to something in our seafood sauce, but we don't serve seafood on Fridays. Haven't for 3 years. Changed the menu after my sous chef developed a shellfish allergy." He watched as uncertainty flickered across Damon's face. Around them, the chaos continued, but Marcus could see some of the real diners beginning to look confused rather than horrified. "And Roberto screaming in the kitchen?" Marcus continued, his voice carrying just enough to be picked up by the nearest cameras. "Roberto's been mute since a car accident 2 years ago. He communicates through hand signals and writing. The man you have back there doing all that yelling? That's not my head chef." Marcus began typing on his phone as he spoke, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency. "You see, Damon, you've been watching me for 7 years, but you haven't been watching my business. You're working with outdated information. You're bluffing," Damon said, but his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "Am I?" Marcus hit send on his phone, then looked up with a smile that matched Damon's earlier cold expression. "I just sent a very interesting message to Sarah Chin at Channel 7 News. Remember Sarah? She's been trying to get an exclusive interview with me for months. Turns out she's very interested in a story about an elaborate fraud being perpetrated at my restaurant by a man who faked his own death 7 years ago." Damon's face went pale. "You can't prove that." "Actually, I can." Marcus pulled up another screen on his phone. "See, I never quite believed you were finished. Call it intuition, call it paranoia, but I hired a private investigator 5 years ago. Took him 2 years, but he found you. Did you know you've been running similar operations across the country? Portland, Seattle, Denver, always targeting successful restaurants, always using the same playbook." The chaos around them seemed to quiet slightly, as if the actors sensed something had shifted in the dynamic. "I have photos of you in Seattle, receipts from the equipment rental companies you've used, bank records showing payments to actors and fake staff members. I even have recordings of you bragging about your restaurant takedown business to potential investors." Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow seemed more threatening than a shout. "But here's the really beautiful part, Damon. While you were setting up your cameras and hiring your actors, I was setting up my own little surprise." He gestured subtly toward the kitchen, where the real Roberto had just appeared in the service window. The actual head chef looked confused but unharmed, and he was already beginning to restore order to the chaos. "Jennifer texted me the moment you walked in," Marcus continued. "She recognized you from the old photos I keep in my office. Did you really think I wouldn't have contingency plans? That I wouldn't prepare for something like this?" Damon looked around the room, and Marcus could see him starting to notice the cracks in his perfect plan. Some of the customers were looking nervous, checking their phones, whispering to each other. The live stream comments were beginning to shift as viewers pointed out the inconsistencies Marcus had mentioned. "You're lying," Damon said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The beauty of live streaming," Marcus said, standing slowly, "is that it works both ways. While your audience was watching what they thought was my restaurant falling apart, my audience was watching something else entirely." He held up his phone, showing the screen to the nearest camera. "This is the real live stream, broadcasting from cameras I had installed after your little anonymous tip 3 weeks ago. It's been recording everything, your actors, your fake staff, your elaborate setup. And it's been broadcasting to a very different audience." Marcus could see the moment Damon realized he'd been outmaneuvered. The confidence drained from his face, replaced by the same desperate panic Marcus remembered from their final confrontation 7 years ago. 27,000 viewers and climbing," Marcus said, checking his phone. "They're watching a master class in attempted fraud. And the best part? Every single one of your co-conspirators is on camera, along with evidence of your entire operation." In the distance, Marcus could hear the sound of sirens approaching. He smiled at Damon's look of growing horror. "Did I mention I also called the FBI?" The sirens were getting closer, their wailing cutting through the dining room's tense atmosphere like a knife. Damon's face had gone from confident to desperate to something approaching genuine terror. The actors scattered throughout the restaurant were beginning to look around nervously, some already edging toward the exits. "You're bluffing," Damon said again, but his voice cracked on the words. "You can't have." "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus said, standing and addressing the room with the commanding presence that had made him a successful restaurateur. His voice carried clearly, picked up by both sets of cameras, Damon's and his own. "I want to apologize for the disruption to your evening. What you've witnessed tonight is an elaborate fraud being perpetrated by a man who faked his own death 7 years ago." The real diners, the few who weren't part of Damon's scheme, looked confused but intrigued. The fake customers were starting to panic, whispering urgently into phones and gathering their equipment. "My name is Marcus Delacroix, and this is my restaurant," Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "The man sitting at my table is Damon Cross, my former business partner who has spent the last 7 years running a criminal enterprise targeting restaurants across the country." Damon shot to his feet. "Shut up! You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I?" Marcus pulled out a tablet, holding it up so the cameras could see the screen. "This is footage from Seattle, March 2023. That's you, Damon, paying actors to disrupt Pier 47 Seafood. They went out of business 3 weeks later." The tablet screen showed clear video of Damon handing envelopes to people who looked suspiciously similar to some of the customers in the restaurant tonight. "And this," Marcus swiped to another video, "is from Denver, August 2023. The Copper Kettle. Same playbook, same result, a family restaurant destroyed by manufactured scandal." Damon lunged forward, trying to grab the tablet, but Marcus stepped smoothly aside. The movement looked natural, almost choreographed, and Marcus realized he was actually enjoying this. After 7 years of guilt and self-doubt, the truth felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "You see," Marcus said to the cameras, "Damon's been running what he calls reputation management, destroying successful restaurants and then offering to help their competitors for a substantial fee. He's not seeking justice or exposing real problems. He's a predator who preys on hardworking business owners." The restaurant's front doors burst open, and FBI agents flooded in, their badges visible and weapons drawn. The few remaining fake customers immediately raised their hands, while the real diners watched in fascination. "Damon Cross," the lead agent called out. You're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy, extortion, and about a dozen other charges we've been building against you for the past 6 months." Damon's face went white as the agents approached. 6 months? He whispered. Marcus smiled. "Did I forget to mention? The FBI has been investigating your little operation since Denver. They just needed someone to catch you in the act. Someone willing to play bait." The truth hit Damon like a physical blow. "The anonymous email, that was you." "Guilty as charged," Marcus said. "Though I have to say, you made it almost too easy. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize your writing style after 15 years of partnership?" As the handcuffs clicked around Damon's wrists, he looked at Marcus with something between hatred and admiration. "You son of a bitch. This was all a setup." "The best kind," Marcus replied. "The kind where the bad guy sets himself up." The lead FBI agent stepped forward. "Mr. Delacroix, thank you for your cooperation. Your evidence was crucial in building our case." Marcus nodded, then turned to address the cameras one final time. "To everyone watching, both on Mr. Cross's stream and on mine, this is what real accountability looks like. Not manufactured outrage, not fake scandals, but actual justice for actual crimes." He gestured to Jennifer, who had been watching from the kitchen doorway with tears in her eyes. "Jennifer, would you please comp everyone's meals tonight? I think we've given our real customers quite enough entertainment for one evening." As the FBI led Damon away, he called out one last time. "This won't save you, Marcus. People will still remember this night." "You're right," Marcus replied calmly. "They'll remember the night a deceased man came back to life, tried to destroy an innocent business, and got exactly what he deserved." The live stream comments were exploding with support for Marcus and condemnation for Damon. #Justice for Meridian was already trending, and food bloggers were rushing to correct their earlier posts about the scandal. But as Marcus watched Damon disappear into the police car outside, he felt no satisfaction, only a deep, bone-weary sadness. 7 years of guilt, 7 years of building his success on what he thought was his friend's grave, 7 years of wondering if he could have done something different. The truth had set him free, but some scars run too deep to ever fully heal. Jennifer approached quietly. "Boss? What now?" Marcus looked around his restaurant, his real restaurant, with his real staff, serving real food to people who trusted him. Despite everything, it was still beautiful. "Now we go back to work," he said. "And maybe next time someone sends me an anonymous email, I'll just delete it." But even as he said it, Marcus knew he wouldn't. Because sometimes, facing the truth, no matter how painful, is the only way to truly move forward. The cameras finally stopped rolling, but the real story was just beginning.